One of the most terrifying cults that I have learned about recently refers to themselves as the Children. And the reason that they terrify me so much is because they are related to so many other cults. Well, Scientology came about in 1953. And two members from this church, Robert D. Grimson and Marianne McLean, decided to leave it and start the cult of the Process Church of the Final Judgment. And they brought their satanic teachings to the US around the 1970s. Well, if you guys watched my previous video about the Son of Sam killings, which occurred in New York City around the 1970s, you might be able to connect these two things together. Well, the issue with this case is that one man was convicted. But it seems as though police really fudged this up. There was so much attention around this case that they were just looking to just put someone behind bars instead of actually doing full investigations. Well, one editor named Maury Terry ended up taking investigating into his own hands. And not only was he able to find a substantial amount of evidence and cryptic messages, but he was also able to find where the cult would meet up for their rituals, Devil's Cave. Part 2 to why I don't think the Son of Sam worked alone. Well, it was rumored that there was a cult working in New York City that was an offshoot of the Process Church of the Final Judgment. They referred to themselves as the Children and ended up in Yonkers. Well, when Maury was doing his investigating, he was let know by several people that their rituals were done in Untermeyer Park, an estate that used to be absolutely beautiful. But as you can see from the pictures, there's now an abandoned pump house. And when investigating this, trigger warning, they found blood on the walls and blood on the ceiling in symbolic writing. Not only this, but dead animals were everywhere, including specifically dogs. So then it was time to look back at David's letters, in which he made cultural references to Beelzebub, which is the demon known as Lord of the Flies, and Brat, which is a small devil. He also ended his letter as From the Gutters, which was quite literally the nickname for the abandoned pump house. And when holding how he signed his name at the end of the letters to the mirror, you can find the words Sam and Carr and Burke in it. So where were the actual sons of Sam, and why hadn't they been questioned? Part 3 to why I don't think the Son of Sam worked alone. Well, after Maury had taken an investigation into his own hand and was seeing all these connections, he went to the police with it. And he was essentially just told to shut it down. That they had their man behind bars, there's no way other people worked with him, even though there was clear indications that he was working with a cult, and none of the eyewitness sketches even looked like him. So the last thing to do would be able to tie the Sons of Sam to the actual case. So John, Michael, and Wheat Carr were all the kids of Sam, Michael and John specifically being the sons. After talking to neighbors, there were several stories about Sam beating them. Their father Sam struggled with alcoholism, and this was all included in the letter that David wrote. So Maury's like, okay, let's go do investigating in the place that they were from, Minot, North Dakota. And when they got to their hometown, they were told by everyone that they were legitimately cult leaders. There was accounts of them sacrificing dogs, drinking blood, all of the work. So Maury was like, okay, we need to actually get a hold of these guys. Maybe they'll be open to talking about it. But soon after that, it was reported. Part 4 to why I don't think the Son of Sam worked alone. So how did the other suspects mysteriously die, you might be asking? Well, one randomly unalived himself, while the other died in a mysterious car crash, which is entirely suspicious. So after adding all of this evidence together, they were able to release it to the public, and it made sense that Berkowitz would have had other people watching, other people holding the gun, other people doing the killings, all orchestrated by a cult leader. But because their main suspects for this case were now dead, there wasn't really much that they could do. Maury was trying to prevent this from happening again, though. Like, what if the Children decide to send another member of theirs out? Either way, their parent cult, the Process Church of the Final Judgment, was neighbors to Charles Manson, and is where he got many of his own foundational ideas for his cult. So it's so clear that these connections run deep. Let me know what you guys think of this case. Let me know if there's anything in this that you want me to talk about next, like Scientology or Charles Manson, or if you want to hear more about the Process Church of the Final Judgment. Either way, follow my Instagram for more content. Imagine TikTok being so powerful that they actually help you identify the person that almost murdered you. On my For You page the other day, I found this viral video that you guys might recognize, which states videos I took before almost being hunted and murdered. I clicked on her page, listened to her story, and was like, I have to know more. So I reached out and got the full thing. This is the case of Flowers Don't Growl. April 29th through April 30th of 2019, Taylor and her boyfriend Chris decided to take a trip to Falls Creek Falls, Tennessee. Taylor was 5 months pregnant at the time, so they figured they needed one last little trip before they were going to have a baby. And Taylor swore that Chris was going to propose. So that's why she documented so much of this trip, not even realizing that later on it was going to be used as evidence. So they set up at their assigned camping lot. They spent their time hiking, exploring, having fun. Taylor would collect flowers along the way to document it for memory's sake, but please keep these flowers in mind. And then on the second day, everyone from their assigned area was gone except for them. So they were more alone than before, or so they thought. Welcome back to part 2 of Flowers Don't Growl. So later in the night on their last day, they ended up hearing a loud crash. There's very windy roads nearby, so they figured that it was a wreck. And just to make sure kids weren't involved and that everyone was safe, they got out of their tent and ran over to the crash site, which was maybe half a mile away, to go check on the people. The sheriff ends up showing up and it's like a DUI situation, but everyone ultimately was okay. So before heading back to their campsite, Taylor says she has to go use the restroom. So her and Chris walk over to the bathroom so she can do her thing, and in the distance they see a light flickering. And as it gets closer, they notice that someone is running with a flashlight. So they're both cracking jokes to each other like, oh my gosh, this guy really has to go to the bathroom. But once he approaches the restroom, he ends up stopping right at them instead of actually going into the bathroom. And states, and I quote, "Wow, you guys are fast." Creepy. Taylor notices that he has a weird smile on his face and feels really nauseous, but just associates it with the pregnancy. So just to be nice, they continue to have a conversation with him. But ultimately, this is where things go wrong. Part 3 on Flowers Don't Growl. So Chris and Taylor continue their weird interaction with this man. Chris explaining that they got to the wreck fast because they wanted to make sure everyone was okay. And the guy goes, "Yeah, I guess I'm just used to it." And Taylor's confused because, like, used to what? Hikes? Car wrecks? They ask what he does, and he says he travels a lot and likes to go camping. And Taylor, starting to get very uncomfortable now, tells Chris that, hey, they need to go back to the campsite because the police will be over there waiting for their statements. Just trying to make an excuse to leave, and Chris could tell it was BS. And as they start to take steps back, he starts to take steps towards them, asking questions like, hey, how long are you guys going to be here for? And his hand kept playing with his hoodie pocket. Chris was starting to pick up on the message as they continued to walk backwards, while the man followed them forward. And then this guy decides to tell them a little story. He was like, "Car accident. It got me thinking this morning as I was hiking and I passed these flowers. I stopped because they were so beautiful and I heard a deep growl and it scared me. And it makes me think, you never know what day is going to be your last." That's when they saw the knife. 4 to Flowers Don't Growl. So this is when Taylor noticed the outline in his hoodie pocket was the shape of a knife. It completely clicked for her, and she told her husband that they needed to run. He looked at her like, what's going on? And she just states, "Flowers don't growl." So they took off running, and this is when he took off chasing them. And I'll show a map of where exactly they were chased. This is where Taylor and Chris ended up, and this is where they last saw the guy chasing them. And they made it all the way back to the crash site, and luckily the police were still there. They told them what happened and made a report. And 2 of the cops went out looking for him but couldn't find him anywhere, while the other officer accompanied them back to the campsite so that they could pack up their stuff and leave. They tried to get updated on their case later on, but never ever got an update. Having the baby and it being a couple years later, Taylor sits down and ends up making a TikTok. It goes viral and a bunch of people start to DM her with potential suspects. Taylor stopped looking at her DMs because it got so emotional, but one user that messaged her lived in the Falls Creek Falls area and had followed a particular case. She opened the DM and saw the man. This is James L. Jordan. Welcome to Flowers Don't Growl Part 5. So Taylor immediately recognized James L. Jordan as being the person that tried to attack her and her now husband that night. And horrifyingly enough, he ended up killing 2 weeks later, stabbing one female victim that did survive, but stabbing the male to death. The male victim ended up sending out an SOS last minute before he passed, and the police came to arrest Jordan. And honestly, one of the worst things was that he was not found guilty by reason of insanity. And Taylor has tried to reach out to police multiple times because he was very calm and collected the night that her and her husband survived. She has scoured all of her photos trying to figure out where he was at and found out that he was staying back here outside of the regular lots. Followers have pointed out things like this creepy shadow in this video, but ultimately we don't really know where he was at. But because of the story that he told about the flowers, she thinks that he had been stalking them for a while, watching her pick them. Taylor now is using her page to promote safety, learning how to protect yourself and carrying items such as mace or a taser, and campsites where you pay to camp probably should have security. Taylor is tagged below, so please go follow her to keep up with her story. Hi guys, so part 5 was taken down for adult nudity, so I went ahead and uploaded it to my middle reels tab. So if you go to my Instagram, it's not going to be on my main feed or the photos I've been tagged in, it's the button right in the middle. But I've already appealed it, so if you don't have Instagram, just be patient, it should be back up soon, because I was obviously not nude. But I also really wanted to thank you guys for supporting this story. I put so much effort into these videos, so getting positive feedback is always amazing, and I really could not be doing what I'm doing without you guys. Also, I know Taylor really appreciates getting her story out as well. And if you guys have a true crime that's happened to you personally, and you would like to have it shared on a bigger platform, please let me know. Reach out through DMs or on my business email, which is also linked on my Instagram.